With Caitlin Clark missing from the WNBA All-Star Game, the spotlight naturally moved to the rest of the league. It was the perfect opportunity for other players to prove they deserve the attention and the higher salaries they've been pushing for. They attempted to make that statement on the court, but the fans delivered a much louder message. When the viewership numbers were released, they told a very clear story. Caitlin's fans noticed it immediately because this isn't the first time her influence has been minimized. But after what happened this time, the effort to spin the narrative is starting to backfire. Let's break it down. First, hit the like button if you're tired of ESPN's constant narrative games, and subscribe for more updates about Caitlin Clark and the WNBA. ESPN has developed a noticeable pattern when it comes to Clark's impact on ratings. They usually don't outright lie, but they often leave out the most important detail. Instead, they select comparisons that support the story they want to tell. When it comes to Caitlin, the numbers they avoid mentioning are usually the ones that reveal the biggest truth. Take this example. After the 2025 WNBA draft, ESPN proudly reported that viewership had increased by 119%. That sounds massive at first, but when you look closer, the comparison was made against 2024. Why not compare it to 2025? In media and marketing, the standard approach is to compare this year's numbers with last year's, not numbers from 2 years earlier. So why skip 2025? Because 2025 was Caitlin Clark's draft, which attracted 2.45 million viewers. If that had been the comparison, the headline would have looked very different. It would have shown draft viewership dropping by nearly 49%. That's a number they clearly didn't want highlighted. And this isn't an isolated example. The same kind of framing showed up during the 2025 March Madness coverage for the second round, Sweet 16, and Elite 8, where 2024 was used as the benchmark. Caitlin played in that tournament year. So, at first glance, the comparison seems normal. But once the tournament reached the Final Four and the championship game, those direct comparisons suddenly vanished. Instead, the headline switched to phrases like third highest viewership ever. That sounds impressive until you realize the top two records both came from 2024 and 2025, years when Caitlin Clark reached the Final Four. If the full comparison had been shown, it would have revealed that viewership had dropped by more than 10 million people. So the pattern becomes clear. When Caitlin's numbers can be beaten, they're used as the comparison. When they can't, the comparison disappears. That's not random, it's deliberate. What makes it even more ironic is that they assume fans won't notice. The idea seems to be that impressive-sounding statistics will convince viewers that women's basketball is setting record after record without Caitlin Clark. But that strategy actually does the opposite. The more they try to downplay her influence, the more obvious it becomes. And Caitlin supporters are quick to point it out every single time. Every selective stat, every reframed headline, and every careful omission ends up highlighting the same reality. Caitlin Clark is driving much of the growth. That shows just how sensitive the situation around Caitlin Clark has become. In some And even when the media finally admits that she's extremely popular, they almost never. Instead, they credit something else. They'll say it's because of a rivalry, a dramatic storyline, or some headline-grabbing moment. Anything except the player who is actually drawing the audience in. And the moment they acknowledge that she has millions of supporters, then the situation escalates even further. Caitlyn's supporters are no longer described as simply passionate. Now they're often labeled toxic, hateful, or even racist. Some critics argue that her fans don't support Paige Buchers because Paige speaks openly about social justice issues. Others claim Caitlyn should have selected Angel Reese during the All-Star draft just to control her fan base. Even the Phoenix Mercury organization appeared to join the conversation with a subtle message suggesting Indianapolis might not be a safe environment for players. It's a strange situation because the entire system, the league, certain players, and parts of the media, seems to be pushing back against the fans while also minimizing the one player who is clearly driving the league's growth. Deep down, they understand the reality. But protecting pride and influence seems to matter more. Even though if Caitlyn's fan base ever stopped watching, that influence would disappear quickly. And right now, that leverage is especially important for the players. They're in the middle of intense negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement. The players want a significant financial increase. So when Caitlyn Clark was officially ruled out of the All-Star game, it immediately put the rest of the league in a difficult position. This event is supposed to be the biggest showcase of the season, the moment when the spotlight is brightest. But suddenly the usual Caitlyn boost wasn't there. It was simply the players themselves, with an opportunity to prove they could carry the spotlight without her presence. Unfortunately, the early signs weren't encouraging. Ticket prices dropped nearly 48% as soon as the news was announced. That led to an obvious question. How much worse could things get? At first, the weekend actually seemed encouraging. The skills challenge and the three-point contest showed strong growth compared to 2025, which looked like great news. For a moment, it appeared that the players might still deliver a successful event, even. Take a closer look at what they did. For the All-Star Game ratings, they compared the numbers to 2024, the season before Caitlyn Clark even entered the league. Yet earlier in the same post, they compared the skills competition to 2025. So why suddenly switch the comparison year in the middle of the report? The likely reason is simple. Last year's All-Star Game, which included Caitlyn, attracted 3.4 million viewers. This year's game reached about 2.2 million. That represents roughly a 36% decline, around 1.2 million viewers fewer. Instead of highlighting that difference directly, it was buried in the presentation. The comparison choice makes the statistic appear stronger while avoiding the most relevant context. Most people are busy. They glance at 2.2 million viewers and this is where ESPN's strategy backfired. Instead of calming the conversation, the spin drew even more attention. Fans quickly noticed the comparison to 20. To be fair, 2.2 million viewers is still a solid number for a WNBA All-Star Game. However, when you compare it to last year's record-setting audience with Caitlin Clark involved, the 36% drop makes her impact hard to ignore. It also made some of the messaging from players during the weekend feel a bit awkward. Many players arrived with strong statements, wearing protest shirts that read, "Pay us what you owe us." They used a Then another moment added fuel to the discussion. Comments from Kelsey Plum. After the game, she made a remark that seemed to take a shot at Caitlin Clark and her circle. She made that comment in Indianapolis, Caitlyn's home market, during a weekend that ideally should have brought everyone together. Many people viewed it as a misstep. Instead of focusing on the success of the event, praising the city for hosting or acknowledging the huge crowd and enthusiastic fans, the criticism appeared directed at the one player who has helped expand the league's audience. Kelsey and others later tried to frame the remark as a joke, but Caitlyn supporters, the same fans likely bringing new attention and revenue to the league, between inconsistent on-court play and the controversy around Kelsey's comments, the players likely couldn't afford another negative headline. A 36% ratings decline would have sounded harsh on its own. ESPN describing the event as historic helped soften the public narrative, but team owners and executives will look deeper than the headline numbers. In reality, the impact may be even larger. If Caitlyn had actually played, rather than just being present on the sidelines, the audience might not only have matched last year's 3.4 million viewers, it could have exceeded it. Throughout the season, whenever Caitlyn Clark plays, viewership consistently spikes. Her games against teams like the Chicago Sky, New York Liberty, and Connecticut Sun have ranked among the most watched WNBA broadcasts in decades, reaching roughly 2.7 million, 2.2 million, and 1.7 million viewers respectively. That suggests an all-star appearance from her could have pushed the total beyond 4 million viewers. If that estimate is accurate, the difference isn't just a 36% decline. It could represent nearly half of the potential audience that might have tuned in. The surprising part is that none of this needed complicated framing. A straightforward approach would have worked better. Acknowledge that the Caitlyn Clark effect is real. Note that the event still became one of the most watched All-Star games ever, even without her playing, and welcome the new fans who came because of the excitement around the league. That's what many viewers want. Honesty, not selective comparisons or subtle attempts to shift the narrative. The players will likely earn higher salaries in the future regardless. Even though the league has operated at a loss in many seasons, franchise values have increased significantly since Caitlyn entered the league. Owners are investing more, and few people want a labor dispute or lockout. But the league could potentially grow even faster if it embraced the fans driving the momentum, avoided alienating supporters, and acknowledged the role Caitlyn Clark has played in boosting interest. The more people try to dismiss that influence, the more obvious it becomes, and the longer she remains the one player that many of these new fans consistently tune in to watch. If you're still here, drop a goat in the comments, that's you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.